Hello, this is R Rats with Team 4545 League, analyzing the game between Fishhead and Beetlejuice. This was played in Team Event 53 in the third round. It's a very interesting attacking game by Fishhead, and he's had a couple of these submitted already. Good play, Fishhead. Let's have a look. Okay. Sicilian defense. Now, a lot of times in the Sozin type setups, white will quickly drop the bishop back to b3. He doesn't here. It's kind of interesting to maybe leave it there a little bit, and I'll just show you briefly why in a minute, what some of the possibilities. Okay, now black is just screaming to try to chase that bishop if he can, but and again, maybe he can't. We'll just see here. If black tries knight e5 here, rook e1 allows. Well, first off, you have the normal bishop b3, which is probably okay, but white also has the option of tucking the bishop back on f1 and getting it back into play later. Black is knight on e4 may be exposed. White might be able to get f4 in, or bishop f4 with a pin. There's plenty of possibilities here, and that's just left for research with the opening books to see if this is theory or not. And for homework, if you want to try to get this position again, try to evaluate it, just some ideas. But anyway, black plays knight f6, and we can't criticize that. It's perfectly fine. And what's going to happen here is black's just following a normal plan of action, and I'm not too sure about white's next move because it just seems to give black all kinds of interesting choices here. Okay. Knight takes c6. Now black has to recapture, and there's three ways to do it. I don't think black chose the best way. What are the candidate moves here? We take it with the pawn, queen, or bishop, right? Yes, exactly. And I think, I'll just show you what I think is the best choice right away, is to take with the pawn, and there's several reasons for it. Although it's true that we've shut our bishop in, that bishop probably isn't going to stay shut in because c5 is an imminent threat. And if white tries e5, black just puts the knight on d5, and that knight is very nicely posted. So also black has ideas of playing rook d8, tempoing the queen. So let's just briefly look at it. Knight e5. Okay, now what's white going to do? Well, he could play knight e4, but that allows c5, and black should be fine. So he may have to take the knight. Now black has an interesting choice here. How does he retake? If he takes with the d pawn, he's shut his bishop in, right? So, but it's not going to necessarily stay shut in. Black has control of d4. Bishop c5 will be coming, and eventually black can just continue his development and castle, maybe even either side here, and eventually this bishop can get activated. Taking with the e-pawn is probably a mistake because white gets e6 in and gets some attacking chances against the king. So aside from knight d5, black doesn't even have to play knight d5. He can play knight d7 and start pressuring the white pawn on e5. He doesn't even have to take it. He can objectively be playing for c5 here, as well as followed by c4. If at some point white might have to be playing a4, but then knight c5 comes in, and black's got a very decent game here. Okay, so let's just get to the other main idea here. a4. This kind of stops c5 because, well, maybe it doesn't. Let's see. c5. Okay. Now white takes here, and black pushes, and now the bishop goes. It's only got one square to go back to. So black has gambited a pawn here. If takes, and now here, but it seems to me like black's got a lot of activity and could try to find something. Queen e5, pressures e4, has the queen on a nice central square, attacks the knight. That could be perfectly playable. Queen e5, knight c3, then bishop b4. All kinds of possibilities here, and I'm not going to try to analyze them out. It's something for the players to analyze on their own in case this position ever comes up again, as well as similar positions. Okay, so let's consider the other candidate moves. Okay, bishop takes c6 is acceptable as a reasonable candidate move because it keeps the bishop's diagonal open. Now, white could try e5 here, and that kind of embarrasses the black knight a little bit, but black is not without resources here. Okay, white really doesn't have any kind of an attack going, so the knight just comes back to g8, and that looks horrible, but again, black has got some resources here. He's going to eventually redevelop that knight. Now the bishop can come out to c5 here shortly, and then the knight will have e7. So, for instance, what happens if white tries knight e4? Well, you got to be careful. That just may drop the pawn for nothing, and that kind of hurts white's attack. So white's got to prepare for that, say with bishop f4, and like I say, black just goes about his business and continues his development. Okay, so for instance, bishop c5, and now if knight e4, the idea being to check next, white can just or black can just take it. Okay, get rid of the bishop. We don't need it, and now the knight will come to e7, and it's ready to come into play, and we can do some things on this diagonal maybe, and it's a reasonable game for black, but it may not. These might not be the best moves. White's probably a little better off here. So bishop takes c6 certainly isn't a great move, but it's not a bad move. Let's go back and consider the final alternative. Okay, so queen takes c6, and what this just allows is white to get a little clever here, and he plays a fine move, knight d5, and this is thematic in a lot of Sicilian defenses where white puts a knight on d5 and yet black can't take it. If he takes it, he's going to drop his queen. If you can't see it, I'll show it to you. Okay, so now you have this discovered check, and you've got to give up the queen, and you don't have enough for it. The pawn can take. So obviously black can't go into that. So I'm not sure if black handled this the best way. What should black do here? Well, you can play knight takes here. Okay, this is fine. You can play knight takes. Okay, now objectively, what you need to do is put the queen on b6. Okay, it's true that white can trade another pawn, but that activates this bishop, and white doesn't have time for d6 here, and black's getting ready for bishop c5. So suppose white tries bishop e3. Well, black just plays bishop c5, and his position is okay. Black should survive this just fine. He's getting ready to castle kingside, and the white bishop is not really poised to attack the king yet. White will have to stop for c3 and bishop c2, and black will have plenty of time to deal with that. And any time this e-pawn or d-pawn is exchanged, this activates the black bishop. So let's just back up so make sure I'm where I want to be. Yeah, so knight takes wasn't a bad choice, but black didn't do that. He castled, and that just kind of struck me as odd. It seems okay, but it really wasn't necessary just yet. Maybe black saw that he'd get doubled pawns if he did anything else, and didn't want to be having to castle a kingside into a set of double pawns, so he just committed to castling now. But if you think about it for a moment, let's just take it back. Suppose black plays bishop c5, which is fine. It's a developing move. Okay, the best maybe white has in this position is to double black's pawns. Well, how many times have we seen a pawn structure like this? You see it in a poison pawn. You see it in a lot of Sicilian defenses. And the pawn might be weak in some respects. White could play maybe queen f3 here, but black should be okay. If anything, what he can do is okay, on queen f3, black in this position can get away with a move like f5, because if white takes, black black forces triple pawns upon poor white, and also has an open G file to operate here. Black is close to winning this, and white doesn't really have enough. So, and if white doesn't do this, the black king can just stay there for a little bit. He can still castle queenside later, but he can just stay there right now, and in some positions even play up to e7 just to connect the rooks and swing the rook on a8 over to g8, and then if the king needs to run, it can run to the king side or queen side easily enough. So the problem with castling was it just committed to castling, and from there on in it was it got to be a difficult game for black. Okay, so castling, and then white went ahead and doubled the pawns, and then developed a piece. Now black still needs to develop one bishop, and he comes up with, again, another odd plan. And it's one of those impulsive moves. You're saying, take my pawn. And, of course, white won't take the pawn because it gets him checkmated. Black had other options. He did have an open G file. Stick a rook on G8. Stick the bishop on C5. Anything. Try to get your own attack going. Just keep the pawn structure intact. And white just starts finding good moves. He says, well, I'm going to open up some lines against your king. And now white's the one that's actually attacking. Black had visions of attacking, but now it's white that gets the attack. So black pushes by, which is fine, keeps the file closed. But then these bishops start getting squares, and look at the white bishops. They're just raking across the board. And black's got to play very careful. And there's another one, another tempo, and now the queen's kind of pushed off to the side, and now it's okay to take the pawn. So black is left with the having to come back with the queen or get double pawns, and white just keeps finding attacking moves here. It's rather nice. Just go attack the queen, and now threaten to bring the queen into the heart of the black position. And now white goes about, or black goes about, finally trying to do his attack, but it's a little too late. And here white's happy to trade bishops because that bishop is a useful defender of the black king. And if it's gone, then it just opens up all kinds of possibilities for white to attack a little more. And so black trades off, and now his attack on the G file is just ground to complete screeching halt. So he never got anything from it, and now his king is kind of exposed, and what's black going to do? He can't necessarily play queen c7 here because black will check on a8 and then pick up the pawn on a6 with check. Anyway, so I'm not saying exactly sure what black's best choice was. This doesn't help him at all. How does black defend this? Maybe d5. White could grab the pawn on h7 at some point and may very well get away with it, but d5 might be the only other choice. But one problem with that is it opens up another file. If d5 you take, and then you're going to get a rook check here next, no matter how black retakes. So this is a dangerous position for black to be in. But let's just see what happened. f5. And now the checks start, and here's another check, and now finally the bishop develops, and that black king is going for a walk, and ouch, this pawn just sinks in. Black can't take it with his queen because his queen will be lost. It'll get deflected. The king will be put in check, and the king can't guard the queen anymore. Now it looks like, almost in a way, maybe black's going to survive this. He's now threatening to run his king to the king side, and if he can do that and hold on, he's okay here. So he's awful close. He's awful close, but white just keeps the pressure on, and I'm not sure what if black ever had better moves, but this move loses. Now white missed a forced mate, which I'm sure Fischer has found by now. I was looking at the other rook. Okay, what he does is good. There's nothing wrong with it, except the other move was better. Rook takes e6 check, just forces a mate. I think it don't remember all the lines, but In effect, white's going to checkmate. I think you check with this rook first. Yeah, and king takes, and then rook d6, and the king has to come up, and then the queen goes to e7, and you come back here, and I'm sure you can find a mate here pretty easily. So let's just back it up. Okay, so this rook, there's nothing wrong with it except it doesn't mate, but there will be a mate. I mean, I don't even know how many potential force mates there were in here. Fischer had eventually found one, and it's not important if he didn't find the quickest one. We're not perfectionists. The attack is just full on. Look at this: white with tripled heavy pieces on the king file, and black with an exposed king, and no hope for counterplay. He's got that rook on the g file, but it's got no help, and just keep checking, find new positions. There's a pawn, keeping black in pressure, and this looks good. It threatens an immediate mate on f5, and no, black's not really threatening mate because white can interpose, but it'll slow his attack down. But white finds a good move, and black resigned because he's going to, I think he's going to get mated here, but he's definitely going to lose his queen to this check. So it was a great attacking game by white, and hopefully I've given some good ideas for black to get in there and hang on a little better, and some possibilities for both sides out of this variation of the Sicilian defense, what you could do or try to do. And for those that play either white or black in a Sicilian defense, this maybe will give you some food for thought and help your play next time you get in a similar position. So I thank everybody for their time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.